It all starts with something so simple. Just a phone call. But for one woman, that one call kicked off this insane international scam that completely wiped out her life savings. And it didn't stop there. It sparked a legal battle that went all the way to Thailand's Supreme Court. So let's dive in and break down exactly how this scam worked, how the bad guys nearly got away with it, and what this huge court ruling means for all of us.
So this is where the story really begins. Almost 3 million baht, that's how much was stolen from just one person, Miss Niksasa. And let's be clear, this wasn't some simple grab-and-run robbery. Oh no, this was a sophisticated, calculated psychological attack, specifically designed to prey on trust and throw the victim into a state of total, blinding panic.
So, the big question is, how on earth did they pull this off? Well, to really get why the courts had such a hard time with this case, we've got to look at the scam itself, the anatomy of it. This wasn't just one lie. It was a perfectly crafted, step-by-step chain of deception.
Okay, so it all kicked off with a classic hook, a call about a fake credit card debt. Of course, she denied it, right? And that's when they cranked up the pressure. The call gets transferred to a so-called police officer, and to make it all feel legit, they used a spoofed phone number, one that looked almost exactly like a real police station's number. But the final nail in the coffin? That came through the Line app. A scammer pretending to be a high-ranking official, using a real officer's photo and everything, plus fake documents, convinced her that the only way to clear her name was to transfer every last bit of her money into 6 different bank accounts for an inspection. Just unbelievable.
Right, so the moment the money hit their accounts, phase 2 kicked in, making it disappear. The criminals immediately activated this huge network, all designed for one thing: to launder the money and make it totally untraceable.
And the key tool they use for this is something called a mule account, or Banshi Ma in Thai. It works like this. Criminals will go up to regular people and offer them a small fee, say a few thousand baht, just to open a bank account in their name. Then, the criminals take the ATM card, get full control, and start using that account to move dirty money. The poor person whose name is on the account, they've just become a mule.
So think about it. How does nearly 3 million baht just, poof, disappear? Well, the trail starts right here at the victim's account, which is now completely empty. And from there, it just spiders out into this incredibly complex web.
Instantly, like the second it landed, that money was split up and funneled into those first 6 mule accounts. This is what investigators call Tier 1. These are the frontline accounts, the ones the victim was directly told to send her money to.
But of course, they didn't stop there. The money was immediately moved again, this time into a second layer of mule accounts, what's called Tier 2. Now, 2 of these accounts belong to defendants 3 and 4 in our case. You see, all this layering, it's done for one reason: to make the money just impossibly difficult to trace.
And here's the part that really shows you the massive scale of this whole thing. Investigators eventually traced the call center, the actual brain of the entire operation. And guess what? It wasn't even in Thailand. It was being run out of Dubai. We're talking about a super sophisticated international criminal organization here.
Okay, so the police eventually identified 4 main suspects. You've got the mastermind, someone who recruited the mules, and the 2 people who owned the mule accounts. But actually getting a conviction? Whoa, that was anything but easy. This case went on a total legal roller coaster through the courts with some absolutely shocking twists and turns.
I mean, just look at this. It's a mess, right? The mastermind, defendant 1, guilty, guilty, guilty. Okay, that makes sense. But then look at the recruiter. Guilty in the first court, guilty in the appeals court, and then acquitted by the Supreme Court. What? And it gets crazier. The mule account holders, they were found not guilty twice, only for the Supreme Court to come in and say, nope, you're guilty. This complete chaos is exactly why the Supreme Court's final ruling was so important. They had to cut through all of this confusion.
All right, let's get to the final act here and see exactly how the Supreme Court finally sorted out all these contradictions. Because their decisions, they ended up setting some really critical new rules for how these kinds of crimes are handled in Thailand.
So Defendant 4, one of the mule account holders, tried a pretty interesting defense. She basically said, hey, I've already been convicted for using the same bank account in another scam, so you can't try me again for the same thing. It's double jeopardy. But the Supreme Court said, not so fast. They ruled that a different victim, scammed on a different day, is a completely separate crime. The precedent they set is crystal clear. Every single victim deserves their own justice.
Okay, so what about defendants 3 and 4, the mule account holders who'd been let off the hook twice? The Supreme Court really honed in on the legal definition of money laundering. They boiled it all down to one simple question. Did these people knowingly, that's the key word, let their bank accounts be used to hide dirty money?
And the court's answer was a resounding yes. They basically ruled that if you accept money to open an account and then hand over the card, the PIN, everything, you had to have known it was going to be used for something illegal. Trying to say, oh, I didn't ask or I didn't care, that's not a defense. And boom, just like that, they overturned 2 acquittals and sent a massive warning shot to anyone even thinking about opening a mule account.
Now, let's talk about the recruiter, defendant 2. How did this guy get acquitted after being found guilty twice? Well, it all came down to a fundamental legal principle, giving the benefit of the doubt. You see, the main witness who pointed the finger at him later changed his story in court. So now you have conflicting testimony and no other solid proof. That creates reasonable doubt. And when there's reasonable doubt, the court has to rule in favor of the defendant. Simple as that.
Finally, we get to the mastermind. And this is really important. The court broke down what he did into 2 totally separate crimes. Crime number 1 was fraud. That's the whole elaborate scheme, the fake phone call, the fake cop, all the lies that tricked Ms. Nikisa into sending her money in the first place.
Then there's crime number 2, money laundering. This happens after the fraud is already done. This is the act of deliberately shuffling that stolen money through that whole web of mule accounts for one single reason, to hide where it came from.
And this distinction is absolutely crucial. See, the lower courts kind of lumped it all together as one big crime. But the Supreme Court said, nope, that's wrong. They ruled that first you commit the fraud to get the money. Then you commit money laundering to hide it. They are 2 separate crimes, which means they deserve 2 separate punishments. And for the mastermind, that meant a much, much longer prison sentence.
So, after all that legal drama, what's the bottom line? What does this whole landmark case actually mean for you and me? What are the big takeaways we need to remember?
Okay, here's what it all boils down to. First and foremost, opening a mule account isn't just a small favor for a friend. The Supreme Court has now officially labeled it money laundering, period. Second, if you use the same account to scam a new person, that's a whole new crime. Third, for the criminals out there, stealing the money and then hiding it are 2 separate crimes that will get you 2 separate punishments. And maybe most importantly, the court made it crystal clear, playing dumb and saying, I didn't know, is not going to save you.
So this whole case really leaves us with one final, pretty stark question. Imagine a stranger comes up and offers you 3,000 baht just to open a bank account. It sounds like easy money, right? But as defendants 3 and 4 found out the hard way, the real cost isn't what you're paid. It's a year in prison and a criminal record that follows you forever. So, what's the true cost of that easy money? It's a heck of a lot more than you think.